Okay, in this video we're going to look at Photoshop Smart Objects. So at the moment what I've got here is an A4 piece of paper and I've got an image open. I'm just going to drag a copy of this image across so it goes over onto this A4 piece of paper. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a Control T and I'm going to resize that image and make it really small. And I'm going to apply the transformation by ticking it. And then I'm going to change my mind and think, oh, actually I didn't want it that small. Let me put it back. So I'm going to do a Control T and resize it back up again to roughly the size that it was, and double click. Now what happens with images in Photoshop is that when you resize them and make them small and you apply your transformation, it deletes a load of pixels from the image. So when you then think, oh, actually I've changed my mind, I want it to be the original size again, and you stretch it back up, there aren't as many pixels available, so you get a deterioration in image quality. And let me just show you that. If I drag the image across again onto here and make this new copy roughly the same size as what the resized one is below, there we go, I can show you the difference. So that's the original quality we had, and that's the quality that we get after resizing the image and losing those pixels. Okay, so let's do all of this again, but this time we're going to make it a smart object. So now when I drag and drop it across, I'm going to right mouse click on the layer here and I'm going to tell it to convert it to a smart object. Puts a little separate little icon here in the little thumbnail of this window, but let's do a Control T again, and this time I'm going to drag it down. I'm going to make it really small just like I did before, and then I'm going to tick it and then I'm going to say, oh, I changed my mind, Control T and drag it back up again. So exactly what we just did with the last image. Okay, so about that sort of size I think. Double click. Now let's drag across a copy of the original again, and let's make it the same kind of size, and then we'll see if there's any deterioration in image quality. So there you go, that's roughly the same size. Make it a little bigger. There we go. And double click. So the original one's on top and the other one's underneath, and you'll see that there is no deterioration in image quality like we had previously. And that's one of the key advantages of smart objects, is that when you resize a smart object, you do not actually lose any pixel information as if you just do a normal transform. So they are great if you are resizing objects and then you think to yourself, oh, later on I may need to resize that back up. Then make it a smart object and you won't deteriorate any of the image quality. Okay, another great thing about smart objects as well is that they come with smart filters. So if I go and apply a filter, say for example I go and apply a blur filter, and let's just go for a simple Gaussian blur. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blur this image, I'm going to blur it right up like that, say about there. There we go, and we'll click OK. Well, with smart objects it actually comes on as a smart filter. Now that wouldn't normally happen on a layer. If the layer wasn't a smart object, then the filter would just blur it and you wouldn't have any control over it. The great thing about smart objects is that whenever you apply any kind of filters to a smart object, the filter is editable. You can go back to it and you can readjust it. That's not normally possible if you haven't first created the layer as a smart object. So that's really, really neat that later on in your editing down the line you can come back and adjust the amount of blur, in this case to your image, rather than it being fixed like it would be if it wasn't a smart object. The other great thing about this as well with smart objects is that they come with a layer mask when you add a smart filter, which from previous videos we know that if we get a black paintbrush, I can paint in here black, and what that's going to do is it's going to reveal nice sharp coming through where it's painted black, but it's just this layer mask effect again. Really neat little tricks here using these smart objects. Okay, I'm just going to throw that in the bin and just show you one more way that you can use a smart object as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a shape here. So I've got my shape, and we might just round off the corners a little bit. So I'm just going to round them off a bit and we'll just change the colour. In fact, I want all of the corners to be rounded, so let me just put this one back to 0, and let's make sure that chain link is on. Let's round all the corners off. Okay, so what I've done here is I've just created a shape, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to right mouse click and make that into, make sure you right mouse click in the right place. Don't right mouse click here on the little thumbnail. Right mouse click off to the side and then say here that you want to convert it to a smart object. And the great thing about this is that if I now duplicate this layer, so if I do a Control J, I've got a second shape, and if I do a Control J, I've got another one. So this could be navigation buttons that I'm designing for a website, and there's my fourth one. Now the great thing about this is that because they were all duplicated from the original one, if I go into any of them and double click, so this is how you edit a smart object, you have to double click on the thumbnail, you go in, it opens up that object. I can go back in here and I could say, oh, you know what, actually I don't want them to have rounded corners, so I'll put that all the way back down to 0, and I think I might go for blue buttons instead. Okay, so what you'll see is that's made the change here on the opened smart object, but there's no changes occurred here. What you have to do is when you double click one of your smart objects, you go into the editing mode of that smart object, which is what we're in here. We make the editing, we make the edits, we make the changes that we want, we add the things that we need, and then you must save it. Just simply go File and Save, and as soon as you do that, all of your objects will update and reflect the new changes. So that's a really nice thing about smart objects, is that you can create several objects, edit one of those objects, and all of the objects will change and reflect the editing that you have made. So real neat trick there for using smart objects.